Bada bing, bada boom.
Fucking thing sucks. We'll do it live.
Okay. Cruising with Steve. Get in, sit down, buckle up. Cruising with Steve. Get in, sit down, buckle up. Cruising with Steve.
Welcome back. Cruising with Steak. Grimsteak here, coming at you live on Grimerica FM. It is Tuesday, June 30th, 2020. I started 3 minutes early tonight. We're going early tonight, guys. We're live. Joining me, damn, derailed. Joining me is my number one man, Mr. James Cruz.
Yeah.
What's up, man?
Yeah.
And we
I'm doing great tonight. Yeah, can't wait. It's gonna be a fun show. Yeah,
great show. And we also got Mr. Jerry Cthulhu.
Welcome, gentlemen. How are you?
Welcomed. Woo. And we also have Beast Bill.
Good evening, everyone. I love you guys.
Tons of love.
Love
Great
you too,
evening.
Bill.
And we got that guy.
God is love, love is blind. Ergo, Ray Charles is God.
Oh, perfect. And we got Nikki the Dude.
Hey, what's going on, man? Everybody's favorite part of Tuesday, cruising with Steak.
Yeah. It's the best part. We got Zach Hawkins.
You know, I once went to see a wise man, and he refused to speak to me.
Oh, man.
That happens all the time.
Special guest tonight, coming to talk about Giants and his new book, Denver Michaels.
What's up, boys?
What's happening?
Yeah.
Welcome back, Denver.
Welcome.
Three-time guest.
Welcome back. Yeah.
Yeah, third time's the charm, hopefully.
We'll see what happens. Maybe we'll sell you a book, dude. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
We'll check it out.
Yeah.
Man.
Put him into dropping some racial epithets or something.
So, yeah, I mean, we just, every week we go on, we've just been on the COVID train and whatever awesome shit's been going on. And this week we decided to go a little different. Brought Denver back. He's authored some sweet freaking books about cryptids and other schnaz.
Yep.
And his newest book, Giants, Men of Renown, is coming out. Is it out now or pre-order or September?
It's still pre-order. I don't have an exact. Actually, I have a publisher for this one, which I'm kind of excited about. Ooh. Adventures Unlimited Press is publishing the book, and it is a July publication. I don't have an exact date, but you can go ahead and order it now, and it's also up for pre-order on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and a bunch of other retailers. And as far as I know, for those retailers, it'll probably be out in September, but who knows? It might be out a little bit earlier. I don't have exact dates yet.
Right on, man. So why Giants? I mean, this has just been something I've loved Giants since the beginning of getting into the conspiracy stuff. Definitely.
Well, I mean, I think that's true of a lot of people, and for myself, I can remember as a little boy in Sunday school, you get the David and Goliath story and all that stuff. And I mean, the point of the message is, blah, blah, all things are possible with God, the little shepherd boy slays the giant. And that's kind of the message. But I was just always one of those kind of weird kids, and I didn't really care anything about that. I'm just like, wow, there was actually a guy that's 10 feet tall.
It's like the Jack and the Beanstalk stories. Yeah, all those stories, man. Yeah. It all adds up in your head,
And those stories, I mean, it's just widespread, not just throughout our culture, but, so many others. And, from the fanciful, like the, Giant and the Beanstalk that, lived in the castle in the clouds, to things that are maybe a little bit more plausible. There's just so many stories out there. It's just been one of those things that have always fascinated me. And I just decided to write about it.
Nice.
That's Genesis 6, man, there's always that little throwaway in there. They were there before the flood and afterward.
And after the flood. It's one of the, I personally think that's Genesis 6:4. That's one of the most enigmatic verses in the whole Bible, and that's saying a lot because there's some, some pretty crazy stuff in the Bible and
the firmament.
Yeah, I mean, you could do like a whole show on stuff like that, But yeah, so it's just one of those things, and even among Christians, there's no real consensus, I guess, as to like who these giants were, where they came from,
Anunnaki or some shit, like the long-haired, red-headed like giants. You always hear over the years, like I'd say in the last 10 years, there's always like idea of a good giant story coming out here or there, or you hear of the bones or something.
Well, dude, I always love the one where they said that like the Afghani soldiers the soldiers in Afghanistan,
a bunch of them in a mountain.
They had to go fight those mountain
inside
giants.
of a mountain.
Yeah, well, if you're ever up real late at night, driving to work or working a night shift, if you ever listen to Steve Quayle on Coast to Coast, you can get some crazy ass stories.
That's how I started into all of this, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, it'll lead you down those rabbit holes, and I don't know how much of that to believe. I
just loved listening to it super late at night. It was great.
Yeah, it's just cool, and it's like
there's only so much
Art
Steve
Bell
Quayle
and
you
all
can
that
take,
shit
though.
back then, man. Art Bell, and then George Norrie for the last like 20 fucking years or whatever. Yeah, I mean they've been great, and then it just then boom goes the internet.
Then they
here,
reveal themselves as shield.
Yeah, like all this stuff just keeps every year. It just everything you liked, man, it was just a jam job or something. It's just like god damn. So that was the problem with not the problem with it, but like just the lore of this stuff was always so much fun. Yeah, and then I know we like throughout the year or whatever, just promoting like coming out with this book about the giants or whatever, and even just recently, like I remember playing I'll go in a weird video game part, but the newest like Red Dead Redemption 2, like you actually find giant bones in the mountains. It's part of the game. It's crazy. Dude. Yeah, it's cool as fuck. Yeah, like so I always thought that was pretty cool.
That's wild.
And so that piqued my interest for sure. Like there was always a couple little Easter egg things in there, but anyway, that's just part of that game. But then just like once in a while you hear a good giant story or about the bones being found or something, Yeah. So how does this start off? Like, what do you dive into in the book?
Well, I start off, the book is divided into 3 sections. And, the first section I devoted to a lot of the different myths and legends, from different cultures worldwide, I start out with kind of diving into some of the stuff in the Bible, because that's what I'm the most familiar with. And, I got to assume that most of the readers are going to be more familiar with that stuff. And then in the second chapter, kind of go into the book of Enoch a little bit and, some of the extra biblical sources. And from there, talk about some of the Native American legends, your legends from South America and the South Pacific, and just the global nature of all of these myths and legends. And then in the second part of the book, I talk about historical encounters with people and that could be considered giants. A lot of the European explorers, when they landed in the South Pacific and, in the Americas, they would encounter, Indian chiefs that, stood 7.5 feet tall, that kind of thing. And in the last part of the book, I just kind of kick around some different, some different ideas as to where's the evidence, what are some explanations and that sort of thing. I mean, if anybody's like picking up this book like thinking, oh my god, this guy's like solved it, I did. You
compiled a bunch of stories that are on there. It's pretty much
I mean, I I'll just go ahead and just a disclaimer to everybody. I don't think I have any groundbreaking evidence here. I didn't solve the case, but it's a fun book if you're kind of on the fence about some of this stuff, or you just enjoy these kind of stories and things.
Yeah, I like your idea of compiling these cool aspects of the most obvious, like not most obvious, but even like the biblical aspect of it all, like in combining. It's like a little reference almost to the giant aspect, and maybe you can dive off of one of the topics that you would bring, brought up in the book or whatever,
Well,
on your own little search of something that piqued your interest.
Yeah, well, what you find is like the stories, there's the biblical stories, they really match in a lot of ways with something that is recorded somewhere 3,000 miles away. The stories just kind of speak to that something is to me is behind all this. And one thing I did a little bit different in this book, there's several really good books out there, and they go to a lot of the time talking about a lot of the discoveries of giant bones and that sort of thing.
Hell
And
yeah.
I didn't really go into a whole lot of that. I mean, I covered some a little bit of that as it was pertinent, maybe a paragraph I was talking about here and there, but I didn't really go through a whole lot of the old newspaper accounts and the old, like county histories, that sort of thing, because that's kind of been done and done very well, like in Hugh Newman and Jim Vieira's Giants on Record, and like Richard Dewhurst. He wrote The Ancient Giants That Ruled America. And, both of those books really cover that stuff really well. So I didn't really go there too much. I tried to focus more on, on the myths, the stories, and then the encounters,
Right. Man, what was probably the sweetest encounter that you came across?
Well, I mean, for me, just the tales of, when the Dutch landed on Easter Island. I mean, they talk about that there were, like these redheaded dudes that it's like there were two groups of people on the island, your regular Polynesian people, and then there was a group of light-skinned, redheaded, 10, 12 foot tall kind of bullies, I guess, that had subjugated, the people. And that just is to me is very fascinating because, decades later, like when Captain Cook and the English, came to the island, there was no trace of these giants anymore. And it seems as if the the regular sized people had, I guess had enough and overthrew them or whatever. But that's a fascinating account to me. And I was also pretty fascinated with Captain John Smith when he, when he was mapping the Chesapeake Bay up in Maryland around the mouth of the
Was that the dude that met Pocahontas?
Well, I guess if you can believe all that, but yeah, I mean, I don't think it went down exactly.
I saw the Disney movie. I know what happened.
Yes,
Elizabeth Warren or actual Pocahontas.
Oh, got her, Jared.
He might have been around. I mean, you don't know.
Yeah,
man.
But
John Smith of the Chesapeake. I'm sorry I derailed that.
No, you're good, man. But like he drew a map of the Chesapeake and its tributaries. And it's a really artsy map. Maps back in the day were kind of works of art. And, if you look at old maps from the 1600s, they got everything drawn on them. But like in the upper right-hand corner, excuse me, I'm sorry. There's a Susquehannock Indian drawn. And it says the little caption below it says Susquehannocks, giant-like people. Excuse me. I'm sorry, I was coughing there.
No.
But anyway, what he had recorded in his writings, that he was just fascinated at how large these people were, so much larger than the English and the other local tribes in the area. And he, the man on the map in his writings, said he had a 27-inch calf. So, like I'm 5'10", my calf,
That's a Grand Dunlop calf from Grimerica.
Yeah, I mean, from my from the bottom of my foot to my knee, that's like 19 inches. So
yeah,
I'm not
huge.
smart enough to I'm not smart enough to extrapolate all that out as far as the ratios of the rest of his bones, but that's a pretty big boy.
Man.
And like you read in the I think even on the National Park Service's website, where the John Smith, there's like a Chesapeake trail or what have you, and they talk about how he commented on the Susquehannocks, how large they were, but they're like, oh, they just never seen, the Indians were just, a few inches taller than the English, so. He exaggerated. I mean, even if he exaggerated, he's given like a pretty exact measurement there. And so I don't know, man. I think there's probably a little something to it.
Oh, yeah. No, there's definitely. I mean, if an exact measurement.
Yeah, I mean, what? And he also gave an exact measurement for the man's arrows. He said they were 45 inches long.
Yeah.
Anybody's ever done any archery before? That's a pretty damn long arrow. Yeah,
it's bordering on ballista.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe he's exaggerating, maybe he's not, but I mean, the point is there's a lot of other tales. Of the Susquehannocks being, extremely large people.
So did the Susquehannocks also have this red hair thing going on?
No, I think that they were, just looked like the other natives. They were just extraordinarily large, as far as I know.
What if everyone else was just really short? But no, like you're saying though, man, this dude his legs and stuff were so big, like it couldn't have been that small. Yeah, like
that was a thing. I mean, nutrition caused some serious issues with people's height and their body mass.
Well, and that's another thing that I look at it is when you have these accounts of these measurements and things, and then you take into account that people of the day back then were much smaller than they are today, because like you said, you go to a museum and look at an old Civil War uniform. It's like it would be like putting on a kid's jacket or something, I mean, men, back during the Civil War, were probably 5'6", 5'5",
why
for the most
that?
part. I think it's nutrition and for the most
food
part.
restriction,
Wouldn't
diet
you say
restrictions.
that I would think that they ate healthier back then than we do now with all the
but there was more scarcity. We've got more variety, I think, in our diet.
Oh yeah, because you would go probably longer periods of
without
not
certain
eating.
vitamins.
Yeah,
and
Did you look
And
into
healthier
the,
generations.
Yeah.
Did you ever look into the giant of Kandahar?
It's one that I just kind of I haven't really looked a whole lot into it. I've heard some of the stories and things, but it seems kind of a little far-fetched to me, even for me.
So can you give us a little bit of background on the Kandahar, the giant of Kandahar thing? And
well, from what I've heard, is that the tale where the soldiers?
Yes, that's what I was talking about at the beginning. Yeah, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to butcher the story, but I had heard, and I don't remember when I first heard it, but it's been quite a few years now of some soldiers in Afghanistan killing a large, and I I might be butchering it here, but I think it was like 15 feet tall, 12 or 15 feet tall. I
Looks
think
pretty-
he had
yeah.
like long red hair in a cave in Afghanistan, and
Yeah.
supposedly like the government, covered it up and all that. I don't put a whole lot of stock into stuff
The
like that.
story I'm
but-
reading, it's Steve Quayle is the one who broke the story.
Yeah, it was. It was.
Broke
we talked about Steve Quayle.
Steve Quayle,
Okay,
yeah.
I missed that. I
Yeah.
missed the reference, but yeah.
No, I mean, and I liked I've read some of his books and stuff, but
Steve
I don't
Quayle.
put a whole lot of stock into a lot of, what, he says, but I don't want to, like be bashing the guy or anything.
So there's been a couple of references to red hair and giants so far. So the Kandahar guy, maybe it's apocryphal, but the Captain Cook thing, in any of the reading and research, have you found any indication of like what kind of red hair? Is it red like it grows red, or it's red like it's dyed like
It's red like they're gingers.
Like just
that's what I'm
regular
asking.
Red hair. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as far as that I could tell is, red hair, because they're oftentimes spoken of as light skinned, and even in a lot of the old Native American stories, they're a lot of their old stories. If you read, I could recommend a book that speaks a little bit, not so much about the red hair, but like, white giants. If you look at Vine Deloria's,
bunch of Scottish Vikings.
Well,
Coming
yeah,
up
they
there. Or
might
Irish.
have been tall, but not
Irish Vikings. Yeah, sorry.
They were they might have been tall, but I don't think they were that big. But one of Vine Deloria's books, Red Earth, White Lies, speaks a little bit about giants, and especially, right around the close of the last ice age, when the megafauna died off, that these white giants, actually, like hunted the megafauna and that sort of thing.
They're the one that drove them all to extinction.
Well,
big appetites.
Oh yeah, definitely the overkill hypothesis. You gotta love it.
Yeah, I mean, some of what he writes, I mean, is pretty interesting, and there's tales, and I cover a little bit in my book of a race of light-skinned giants in the southeast, the Nahalu, I guess I'm saying that right, but they were supposedly light-skinned giants, and in some of the old stories, they actually had domesticated mastodons and that sort of thing.
That's so fucking badass.
Like herded them like cattle, in some of the old. There's just a lot of fascinating stuff out there about some of these giants.
Just large people.
Yeah, the Cherokee definitely have a lot of folklore about giants that roam in Appalachia there and stuff.
Yeah, and that's I put a little blurb, in my book about one of their stories of a tribe of giants that visited them, and supposedly they came from the west. It just says, from the land where the sun sets, and stayed with them for a time. And in this case, they were friendly. A lot of the giant stories, the giants are not friendly. They're more often than not, they're pretty vicious and cruel. But in this story, that the Cherokee took them in as friends, and then they left. So there's just a lot of really fascinating things out there. It's kind of hard to piece it all together and like point to any one thing.
Right. Did you come across anything with the mound builders in your research?
Well, yeah, I mean, and in the mounds, I mean, this is where the bulk of these giant bones have been found, in your old newspaper reports and like your old county histories that I was talking about earlier. and I visited a lot of the mounds in, West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, places like that. And there's a lot of these old mounds, and a lot of them that, it's hard to even tell how many there were because so many have been destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of these mounds served as burial chambers, elaborate burial chambers for a lot of these giant bones that have been
Yeah, because
recovered.
isn't that kind of like that was some of the lore of the giant stuff, right? Like these old farmers would just mow these things down, and they would come across these huge bones, and then they would disappear like a fucking black chopper comes in.
Or they'd get looted, like
bones.
that was like a job, like treasure hunters, man. They go and just dig those mounds up.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of
Smithsonian cough.
First explorers and shit,
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of that, and I mean, it might sound like, oh, these people are just making this stuff up, but you can read the Smithsonian's and you can go on the Smithsonian's website and download their annual reports, like their I think here, like the 5th and 12th annual reports both have mentions of giant discoveries by Smithsonian field. And when I say giant discoveries, I'm talking skeletons, in the mounds, entombed like in elaborate burials that are 7.5 feet long. I mean, some people's like, oh, that's not a giant, Shaquille O'Neal's that big. But if you look at the concentration of how many there were, that would be a lot of Shaquille O'Neal's, like in just a small area.
Yeah, can you imagine having a whole team of Shaquille O'Neal's? Yeah, I mean, just crazy dominant. Just what a force to be reckoned with. Yeah.
But the Smithsonian, a lot of the Smithsonian's, their agents excavated some of these mounds, especially in the Kanawha Valley in West Virginia and over in mainly in that area, but over in Ohio, Tennessee, places like that. But they sent these bones to the Smithsonian. So and it's right there in their writings. So I don't know if there's like a cover up or something, because people ask, well, where are the bones?
They're down in the basement. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that there's like an active cover up or anything, but at some point they did, have possession of, some of these large bones.
Yeah. Interesting.
So we've heard a couple of different takes on the disposition of these giants. It sounds like there's some that are generally okay and get along with folks, and others are just utterly intolerable and have just crappy dispositions and destroy all kinds of crap. And Enoch talks about that to a certain extent, about how the children of the Watchers and the human women just caused all kinds of trouble. Do you get a sense of, is there some kind of logical division between these? What maybe makes the difference, or is there some kind of common characteristic between these two groups?
Well, I mean, it seems to me that predominantly it just seems from all the stories and things that these were, being of large stature, that large of stature in those times, you're kind of like at the top of the food chain, right? And it's not, maybe, in my opinion, it's maybe not necessarily that you're so much born evil. It's just that there's you're at the top, you've got access to all the resources and everything, and you can just bully people around, and it just seems like in so many of these stories that's just what you have. I mean, there are tales, like we said, of some good giants and things like that, but by and large, the more you read, they seem to be a scourge to people wherever they are. They take the women, they take their food, they, that sort of thing. And they just seem to kind of lord it over everybody. And now it does seem that as time went on, and like as a lot of these giants died out, there were remnants of the giants that survived a lot longer, and occupied like leadership positions, and and things like that. You get a lot of tales of Indian chiefs and chiefs in the South Pacific, things like that are extraordinarily large, and they're not necessarily these bully types, I guess.
So maybe we didn't conquer them, but we assimilated them into us,
or domesticated, or something.
I mean, it seems like that in a lot of ways. I mean, if you read some of your biblical stories, I mean, it definitely seems that Joshua and Caleb just went on a rampage against the giants, and pretty much after they went on this extermination campaign. Largely, not altogether, but largely, they start to kind of disappear from Scripture. You just don't see them anymore, and you have a lot of tales of there's some tales from the from the South Pacific of giants that land on the shore of certain islands in hollowed out timbers, things like that, almost like they might have been escaping, and I've kind of put that in my book. What if they were escaping the armies of Israel, kind of going after them to exterminate them.
Yeah, Kamehameha, he's about 7.5 feet, I think, according to legend, united the Hawaiian Islands.
Yeah, and there's a lot of the stories of in Hawaii, in New Zealand. There's a lot of tales of like 9 foot, 12-foot giants that served as chiefs and things like that. And it's pretty fascinating.
Man, very good.
Have you found any crossover with like Bigfoot with giants? Ooh, or is that kind of its own separate category?
Hell yeah, Bill.
No, there's definite crossover, and I do talk about that some in the book. There are in some of your Iroquois tales, there's a band of giants called the Stonish Giants, and there's a Indian name that I can't say. It starts with a G. Whatever.
I was hoping it was like Voldemort. Like you can't say it.
No, it's not quite that. But
starts with a G and you can't say it, and it ain't Jigger.
There's a lot of people that think that that these were a aggressive band of or aggressive subspecies of Eastern Bigfoot, and in those tales, these giants, they're called the Stonish Giants because they like roll in the like in the mud and get kind of like flint chips all over them. And it repels the the Iroquois people's arrows, and serves as a protection. And a lot of Bigfoot hunters and Bigfooters talk about that. Bigfoot rolls in mud, and I've read a lot of accounts of people describing mud matted Bigfoot, like its hairs matted in mud and things like that. And being in that area, these were in the Iroquois stories, these were very aggressive. They they ate people.
Oh damn.
They would they terrorized people. Like hunters that would be out in the woods, they could shout really loud, and their shouts would disable hunters. And, you know, a lot of your Bigfooters think that Bigfoot, you know, can emit infrasound, you know, which could, you know, conceivably disorient, you know,
like a barbarian
someone.
shout attack.
So were they like vampires because they could do that? Like they're bat people?
I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. But
if like sonic weaponry.
Yeah, I mean, so to me though, like the tales, you know, these giants, even though they, you know, they were vicious and that sort of thing. You know, if you read the stories, they actually invented this flint mail, and like one of the giants showed the other giants how to like actually make this flint covering. They talk, they have names, they organize like attacks on villages and things like that. So to me, that kind of eliminates them, you know, being tied to Bigfoot. But you do come into a lot of the stories where people do take like a lot of the like one of the Cherokee tales. There's a giant Sulkaloo that people think you know was a Bigfoot, and I don't really agree with that stuff. But you know, there is some overlap there for sure.
Yeah, I know you've written about Bigfoot and stuff before, haven't you? For sure. Like I know.
Yeah, I mean, I have written some. I mean, I'm not. I am not what I or anyone should consider a Bigfooter. I'm certainly not an expert on it, but I have written about the topic.
No, I guess mainly I just kind of, that's why I was just wanted to mention it, because I think I've just a few times we've talked before. Yeah, I know we've talked all types of cryptids and stuff through all the different books you've written about, but I just can't remember if you knew anything about like people being attacked by a Bigfoot. Have you ever heard of those kind of stories? I don't. Well, that doesn't ring a bell to me for some reason.
I mean, I've heard of, you know, I mean, I guess if somebody was actually attacked by one, there, you probably wouldn't hear about it.
Okay, yeah, that's true. Yeah, but that's why they all go missing, right? So if you get attacked, you get sucked into their realm. Yeah,
you would think. But I have heard stories of them, you know, like throwing rocks and boulders and you know, things like that. You know, I don't. You know, I don't really know what to make of them, to be honest with you.
I'm kind of fond of Bigfoot being a feral human. That's kind of the way I lean. You know, more. I think if it's a primate, we find it at some point in time. And
you would think.
I mean, that's as good a theory as anything. And a lot. And to your point, I mean, a lot of the tales that I've heard, people have described it as a Neanderthal or Neanderthal, however the hell you say it, or you know. Things like that, like, you know, 7 foot tall, but just look like a hairy person almost. And and that would make more sense in a lot of ways, is how they can keep hidden, you know, because, you know, a lot of, because let's face it, I mean, you get a lot of pictures on the internet of sticks leaning this way and that way, and, you know, shady, maybe that's a footprint, maybe it's not. But you know, nobody ever takes a picture of a pile of Bigfoot shit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They'll say that they have a whole family of Bigfoots in their, you know, on their property, and you just never see that.
There's I mean, the kids aren't going and the crapper out back, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not even trying to be funny about it. You just never get pictures of that. And so people will say, well, it buries its waste. Well, I mean, you would have to at least find, you know, disturbances in the ground, you know, where it's been buried and things like that. And you just don't see that. So, I don't know.
It's hard.
Bigfoot.
It's hard.
Maybe they fling it.
Yeah, I mean,
or why? Or how? I
primate.
like
nobody's
primates,
ever
right?
stembled on a corpse. Like that's crazy. Then they're like, well,
Yeah,
they probably
and
have burial ceremonies
and
or
they
something.
say that they
yeah.
that they bury their
But it's
dead,
like,
but that would go back to his point that maybe it's more of a feral human. A feral human could conceivably bury the dead, bury their poop without leaving a trace a lot better than
right. But
a
I mean,
primate,
humans use indoor plumbing, and we have burials, and you still find shit and dead bodies out all in the world. So I mean,
but you guys are skipping the whole idea that they're probably interdimensional.
Yeah,
yes, there you go.
So it just evaporates.
It's literally the only explanation.
They don't shit here.
There's some sort of fey creature. That's the only explanation.
Or they've got a 4D toilet that flushes it into 2 other dimensions.
Who knows? I mean, I don't discount what people are seeing out there, but I mean, there's
people are seeing something.
Interdimensional porta potty,
which would beg the question of where does all this shit come from?
I don't know.
I just all the stories and the lore and all the cool things you find too.
Yeah,
because it's all it is. So there's so much. Especially with all the natives, man. There's so many stories out there, like in all the shit that they've seen. Because they're like, I actually feel like they're living in nature and around the shit, and actually living with the shit,
feeling it.
They'd see it. Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
They're not just watching, movies every night or TV or just some shit and making stuff up. I don't know. It's crazy. Lore back then was just great.
Yeah, I mean, you have to really, it has to give you pause, when they, with some of the stories and things that they have, it's, makes you wonder that, there has to be a little something to some of those stories.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the giants, I mean, do you have, is there some thing that consistently resonates with you with all of the stories? Or with some large number of the stories that makes it like, what's your take on it?
Well, I mean, what really resonates with me is that, just the cultures across the globe, just have these stories. So that right there to me is like, there has to be something to it, that there were, or was it at some point in the past, these large, people on the earth, and I just can't get around that, for me, and then the other thing is, like we were talking earlier, like the, in the Book of Enoch, and it doesn't. The Bible just kind of glosses over it a little bit, but the Bible talks about when the sons of God, came into the daughters of men. The Book of Enoch talks about these watchers, taking on human wives.
Watchers, yeah.
And you find similar things, in other cultures, and that just to me, it's like what went on back then,
especially if they're 12 to 15 foot tall, man, that's gonna get tricky, making kids. we're gonna tear somebody open.
Well, belly buttons always touch, right?
Somebody's gonna need a step ladder for sure.
It's just but it's it's like something went on back then. I really don't know what the ancient world was like, but I think it's a lot different than what we've been led to believe it was.
Right. We had megafauna. You got to have mega people to go with it, right?
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
So those would be called mountain giants, maybe.
That makes sense. I mean, if everything else is huge, why wouldn't there be giant people too?
So like all these things kind of intersect. I think like the abominable snowman, the wild man. Yeah, there's because in China they have like the wild man in China, Sasquatch, Bigfoot in America, in different areas of America, right? In the forests and the woods and the mountains. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting how all the cultures across the globe have these like same stories, similar stories. There's pyramids
Yeah.
all across. There was some sort of global thing like ancient aliens. I'm back on board, you guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's fun.
I'm not saying it was giants.
Jerry just shaking his
But
head
it's
over there
giants.
like a motherfucker. I see you.
Yeah.
He knows what's
Because
up.
aliens are fucking fake news, dude.
right.
It's
If
like
space is
space. Space is
gay,
fake.
so is
Yeah.
fucking aliens. I'm totally with Jerry on this one. Cannot show me how you can have a vacuum next to an atmosphere without a barrier and have it exist.
You can't.
Cannot scientifically prove that.
The aliens are from
So-
Inner Earth, so that is.
Thank you, Bill. We have inner Earth
Yeah.
creatures.
If there are aliens here, they're from another dimension here on Earth. They're not from outer space.
And the atmosphere thing just means that Earth sucks more than space does. So,
So-
you know.
Well,
So back
I
to my
was just going to
point.
say the atmosphere people is for people that don't want to scientifically use the method to prove it. But yeah,
There
Wait,
was
weren't there stories about giants in Inner Earth? Isn't that
Probably.
in Agartha?
Had
Agartha
to
or
be.
whatever?
All species are in Agartha.
Yeah, there's. I
the
didn't really get
aliens
into
were finding
those.
them in caves.
Yeah, I didn't really get
They're
into
probably in
those.
Inner Earth.
Yeah, I didn't get into that in the book. Really, that really goes down big time rabbit hole. So I didn't really go into that. And then plus with with that you kind of bump into a bunch of your really weird occultic stuff. So I'd say it's not really a place that I wanted to go here.
Man, that sounds where all the
Yeah.
juice is.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, I didn't really. I don't know. There's I
Yeah,
just
let's
don't
talk
really
about
want to
the
go there.
Jews here.
Hell yeah. Man.
There it is. There it is.
This is Suzanne's
But-
clip. Yeah.
But I don't know. There had to be some sort of something. Maybe not ancient aliens, but there was something that was connecting all of these cultures together. Maybe almost
Yeah,
like
I
some
mean-
sort of mass culture, like Tartaria. Possibly.
Maybe. I mean, I don't think.
Did you just summon me, dude?
Yes, I did.
Well,
Did that on purpose.
I mean,
There he is.
But yeah,
I
it's,
didn't hear anyone
Or
mention
car or
Earth
a
and
bus.
trains. What the fuck?
giants.
the
But,
stories are so similar though, and like
Mhm.
as far as the the ancient aliens angle, however whatever an alien is, or what
Yeah.
or whatever an angel is, right? I mean that's pretty much what the Bible, the Book of Enoch, and a lot of others are saying.
It's
Is
just
that
these other the
angels
others.
procreated with women, and a
Hmm.
race of giants was the result. So
Exactly.
I mean that's.
and it was all before the flood. I mean, so we got these cycles of time going through. When the Sphinx line it up, you can go back maybe 26,000 years. Maybe some really big humans or whatever, close to human, built
Yeah.
that shit. And we just scabbed onto it and added. As when I say we, I'm just
The
whoever.
collective we,
I don't-
the
yeah,
human
right,
we.
right, the
Yes, I know what you
consciousness,
mean.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But you got to look back at we've been running this program for a while.
Oh yeah.
maybe.
Well, I totally think
we got big, we got small.
Yeah.
You go back in Genesis. James talked about the firmament a while ago.
Mhm.
There's some theory that there was like a water canopy,
Mhm.
water vapor circling
Yes.
the earth, cause things to grow big and live long. What does
Right.
a lizard do? Lizard grows the whole time it's
That's-
alive. If it
right.
lives 900 years, that sucker's huge.
And that's
You
where a
know.
lot of a lot of people I used to know that were real conservative Christians, they actually taught that there was either a water vapor or ice canopy that surrounded the earth, and like you said, it allowed for better conditions, almost like living in a hyperbaric chamber.
Yeah.
Almost, it
Lack
filtered
of-
out all the radiation and things
That's
like
it.
that.
Yeah.
And if you look in the Bible, and before the flood, people lived to be about 900 years old, And, those legends are also, all over the globe. That's not unique to the Bible. That's a lot of cultures talk about extreme longevity, people living, 1,000 years old, 300 years old, and that sort of thing. And so it seems like, if you put any stock into those old stories that the earth, I'm not saying that there's a vapor canopy around, but I'm saying that there's some kind of something was different long ago than it is now.
There's been cycles. The Sumerian kings list goes along, kind of with those Bible stories.
Yes.
Even expanded numbers from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that that the giants from whatever Bible times, pre-flood, whatever, are they the same type of giants that existed until relatively recently? Or are we talking about two different kinds of things?
Well, I would think that that around the Bible times that that those were, like I guess I would kind of call them the original giants. And we got no idea how long they lived. Certainly they weren't all wiped out in the flood, because you have them after the flood as well. But
they could swim real good.
Or else they were just that tall, who
knows? Yeah.
But
stand up on a hilltop and be above the water.
But to me, I like to kind of make the distinction that, when I talk about, just so, nobody thinks I'm saying anything too crazy. Like
Get
when
as
I
crazy
talk
as
about
you want,
these,
Denver.
these, the people like we're talking about that explorers met that were 8 feet tall, that sort of thing. That I think that they probably had, some of those genes passed down for a long time, and they were probably preserved, kind of like the way that royal families will
bloodline
until recently, of course.
Yeah.
But, in the old days, how royal families would only marry royals.
Yeah.
And so that lineage was kind of, handed down to more recent times. But and as you go down, of course, your size is going down as well.
What do you think is like the cutoff? What time period would you say is probably the last time you, like, not necessarily people with giantism, because I don't really count that.
Yeah.
Because those people don't live very long, and like they clearly have, like, unless you do think that they're related to giants. I don't.
Andre the Giant. Yeah.
No, like, I don't. I think that's two different things. Personally, I mean, I'm just guessing here. But it seems to me that the ancient Americas and maybe some isolated places like in the South Pacific were probably like your last strongholds where you had some of this leadership in the ancient societies that that were giants. And I think that a lot of that really went away with around the European contact time, smallpox, wars, that sort of thing. Like the Susquehannocks we were talking about earlier, they were almost entirely wiped out, with smallpox and diseases and and things like that. And so I think the European contact was pretty much the beginning of the end, I would say, of any of the remnant that had survived into the present times. And it's just my opinion. I mean, I can't prove it.
Well, I mean, it's kind of historical too. I mean, it's pretty much the death knell of a civilization when they run across the European implication. I can't think of the word right now.
I don't know. A lot of that kind of just seems like
civilization and
a scapegoat, like the whole smallpox thing. I was looking into something else. I forget what, but it was it was the Neutral Confederation in Southern Ontario and Western New York, and there was a paper written about them about how, like, well, we think that they were probably wiped out by smallpox or whatever. And then you go and look into like, well, how'd they determine that? And
Yeah.
the only proof that they had in this paper anyway, that it was smallpox that wiped them out, was basically just a handful of Jesuit French priests just going around to different cities and just writing some shit down. And they're just like, yeah, there was like, 50,000 people here. And when we got here, they said everyone was sick. We don't really know. They don't really know what it is. They said it was a smallpox type thing.
Well, you had me at
there was a
Jesuit right there.
Yeah, I mean, and it was funny. Even the paper I was reading was like, we can't really necessarily take these Jesuit scholars as to their word that this exactly was going on. But then, like later in the paper, I think somebody else must have written like a different part of it because they were like basically contradicting that. Like, well, I mean, these reports are solid. Obviously, these people died from smallpox, even though there's no actual evidence. I guess my point is like, all we really have to go off of is a handful of people that
A
said
bunch
they
of
were
lying
there.
Jesuits.
Yeah, just a bunch of fucking just a bunch of like, you have these religious people. You have they have the founding of this, of America, which is allegedly supposed to be freedom of religion, and
they have an
expression.
agenda, and then
you have most of our history of the United States is written by the very same people that we claim to have escaped from by setting up the United States. So it's like, well, what can you really even take? And with the Giants thing, there's also I was looking into the Osage Indians, and like I live here in Arkansas, and there's just anecdotal stories of people that I've met here who talk about people that they know who were Osage Indians. None of them are less than 6'5". Like they're all, and they're not like they're big, like they're sizable people, and so you got to think whatever kind of race the Osage came from probably was pretty big, and not even that long, like not too incredibly long ago, like maybe 4 or 5 generations at most.
Well, I would point to Ross Hamilton's book. It's called A Tradition of Giants, and you can I think you can download a PDF for free off of academia.edu. But anyway, he talks about the Osage and how they were probably like the last, or like the last, and had the best genes, and like most recent, and I think and even Thomas Jefferson commented on when an Indian delegation went to Washington, at how impressive the that they were, their stature and physiques.
Man.
Montezuma was a striking character to the Spanish when they got there. And, you don't see a lot of really tall, well, other than Red Pill, you don't see a lot of really tall Mexicans anymore.
Yeah. And, there's accounts of, of when Cortez, met some of the chiefs that were enemies of the Aztecs, and there's an account where they told him of the ancient giants that were in the country, back in their ancestors' day, and supposedly they brought him a thigh bone that was 3 feet long, and that they had it sent to King Charles, and of course, skeptics are like, "Oh, that's a mammoth bone," things like that. But I mean, there's just so many, accounts like that of things that.
What do you think about the Smithsonian cover up? Like they have all the bones, and they got rid of them and all that shit. Did you hear?
Well, yeah, and here's what I tell people: I don't believe in an active cover up that's going on. Okay, I like if you talk to somebody at the Smithsonian now and they say, "Look, man, I don't know anything about it. I totally 1,000% believe them.
Mhm.
But in all of these old newspaper reports we talked about, it'll give the information about the bones, blah blah blah, and that they contacted the Smithsonian or an agent from the Smithsonian, looked at them, or that they were sent to the Smithsonian. I talked about earlier how the Smithsonian's own agents excavated mounds,
right,
in the Kanawha Valley in West Virginia, and they said some of them were 7.5 feet long, and and in their reports, it talks about their procedure from packing up the bones. So I mean, these went to the Smithsonian. Now at some point, I think they probably ended up in the Potomac or something like that.
Right.
I don't know if
Just dumped them.
I think that somebody somewhere got rid of them. I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that there's this Indiana Jones warehouse.
I was just gonna say that earlier.
I want that warehouse 13 to be real.
I mean, maybe there is, but it just seems that I don't really subscribe to that. But I do believe that I don't. And maybe with the I guess it was 1990 or early 90s, the Native Americans Graves and Repatriation Act mandated that bones and presumably a lot that were of large stature were to go back to their tribes for proper burial and that sort of thing. So we know a lot of private museums and state museums, that sort of thing, that supposedly had bones in their collection, did send a lot back for reburial and that sort of thing. So I don't know if if maybe what was left and a lot of the bones, there was a big collection on Catalina Island, a lot of giant bones, and a lot of those were returned to the tribes, and they were reinterred like in secret locations. These were there's not a lot of fanfare around these bones, so you wouldn't know like that. Okay, these bones were returned to this location. You know what I'm saying? You wouldn't necessarily know.
The media
about
wasn't
that.
there snapping pictures,
right? That's not.
articles.
Yeah, it's not going to be the Washington Post out there reporting on that sort of thing. So I think a lot of them that they had, if they had any left, would have got returned at that point. But I think probably a lot of them were ditched way before that.
Definitely.
Catalina falls outside the narrative anyway. There's settlements out there that date a lot older than they want to give credit for people being over here.
Yeah, sure.
Catalina Island area. Yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of giant bones, recovered, on Catalina Island and San Nicolas Island, a couple other islands in that chain off the coast of California. And I mean, there's a lot of literature on those discoveries.
A lot of ufology and shit out that way too, right?
Yeah, it kind of goes hand in hand.
It's like the Bermuda Triangle, the left coast out there. Yeah, it's like there's like this crazy area right over there. It's just always prominent underwater, above water, naval shit. It's just so many cool, weird stories out there. But
hell yeah.
I guess that's a place to be. I'd say hang out there for a day or two. You might see something.
Do it.
Yeah.
Man. Well, I think we're going to slip into some hate mail. Anybody got any final questions for Denver about Giants?
I do have one last one.
Get it.
What do you give me your thoughts on, if you have looked into it or just even speculate? I don't give a shit. What are your thoughts on the idea that a lot of mountain ranges are ancient quarries of giants?
That's something that I've kind of kicked around a lot. A lot of your it comes up again and again in a lot of your giant stories that these megalithic constructions were built by giants and that sort of thing. And I don't know. I don't take a strong opinion on that sort of thing because I look at some of these large structures that are built, and
you're like,
I don't
how
care.
did they do that?
Yeah, and like I've been to a lot of those Sacsayhuaman, in Peru, and a couple Ollantaytambo and those places, and it's like I don't care if you are even 12 foot tall, you still ain't lifting those blocks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't really take a strong stance one way or another on those. I think it's interesting, and a lot of it does fit with a lot of the old stories. I mean, your giants are attributed to these structures all over the world, but
there's that Black Rock area. I forget the name of the mountain. I think it's like Black Rock Mountain or something in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
That's the it's a mountain, but it's not really a mountain. It's actually just like a massive pile of stones, like black stones that have all just been kind of gathered. And it's not a mountain. It's more of almost like you could almost see it as like either leftover from like some kind of large scale manufacturing.
Yeah.
But apparently like the Aboriginals in the area like don't fuck with it. Like they stay away from it. Like there's like, no, that's bad juju there. Like don't mess with that thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of those that are attributed to giants. I mean, like I said, I don't think their brute force would even be enough to do that. But maybe they had technology or something, or
pet mastodons,
psychic technology.
Exactly.
Hell yeah.
Maybe they were like a part of an ancient psy culture.
Can you imagine having
blowing
they say
mind
horsepower, but just
Mastodon power. Think about it.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Who
Man,
knows?
it's got 12 horsepower, 12 mastodon.
Yeah, who knows, man?
Maybe they went inside of the earth.
They could have went inside of the earth. I love it. It's all inner earth. Damn.
Inner earth,
that's
baby.
Fucking great.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we can pick this up on the second half, but we got a break here. We just had somebody join the show. What's up, Felix? Hey, buddy.
What's going on, guys?
Nothing. You got a guitar in your hands, and I'm ready for a jam.
Oh, that's gonna be great.
All right, a little song for you guys.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah, I'm muting down.
All right, yeah, cool, exciting.
Here's a good one. This song is it's a band called Dr. Dog, and the name of the song is called. You've heard of them?
No.
Dude, that used to be one of my jams back in the day, dude. Which one are you playing?
It's a song from a kind of a newer one of their albums called "Bring My Baby Back to Me." I think it's called "Bring My Baby Back to Me."
Yeah.
I think they made like a early version of this demo like way long ago, and then they just reworked the songs with a little bit more polished sounds. So this is it's oldie, but it's they reworked
a goodie.
It. Yeah, it's a good one.
Awesome.
All right, Bring My Baby Back to Me.
Can't wait to listen to it.
Here we go. Okay. Ha 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 ha. I am the lonely one, but I could be loved, and you are the only one in Radio Swamp. This is the aftermath for whatever I've done. Am I the only one still holding on? Simple plea, make them pay and make them bring my baby back.
Judas Iscariot, selling your own. A man on the radio, selling you dope. But y'all so afraid of me, but I could be loved. Oh, always so tired of yourself, in love with the radio. Simple plea, make them pay and make them bring my baby back to me. La, da. Oh, make them pay and make them bring my baby back to me. This heart, it burns in rage and fire. I'm locking all my tears inside. No more time to sweep the floor, only time to watch it burn. And I know now I've seen it through the flames, living off the fire. And God, I know I'm better off. Simple plea, make them pay and make them bring my baby back to me. La-da. Oh, make them pay and make them bring my baby back to me. Hope is a terminal, ooh, ooh, ooh. Featureless smoke, ooh, ooh, ooh. Love is just that, ooh, ooh, ooh. Love is a joke, ooh, ooh, ooh. But fate is hilarious, does what he wants, swinging drunk and unhinged from the rafters, dragging his tail through the swamp. Oh, simple plea, make them pay and make them bring my baby back to me. La-da. Oh, simple plea, make them pay and make them bring my baby back to me. La-da. Oh, make them pay and make them bring my baby back to me.
Yeah, man.
Beautiful,
Sweet.
Felix. Beautiful.
I love that one, man. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was really good. Thank you.
That that sounded really, at least
Yeah, they
coming
came through
through
real
Zoom,
good.
it sounded good. Yeah.
Crunchy? Crunchy?
No,
Oh, that was nice.
it mixed pretty decently. I
That was
think.
very. No, that was a good one. That was
They
nice.
got a real nice back catalog. They got a lot of good songs.
Mhm.
As
They got a song called Shadow People.
Shadow
Oh
People.
man,
Nice.
Good for that one. People say they kind of have like a little bit. They're reminiscent of the Beatles kind of thing.
that was beautiful.
Got
That was. I like that, Felix. You just coming in all surprised, haven't heard from you, and then just boop, there you are. Magic.
like that.
I do. That's how I like it. Hey, where could do you have some kind of Patreon or something?
I do.
Let's hear about it.
I got a patreon.com/jingle money. I'm just actually doing finishing touches on issue number 2 of my zine that goes with it. So
Hell yeah.
So I got some philosophy stuff in there. I'm gonna do a little article on Donnie Darko, explaining it a little bit. I watched some YouTube videos and now I know all about the movie.
Well, yeah. So I want to hear your YouTube videos about Donnie Darko YouTube videos. That's awesome.
Usually people ask me what your favorite movie is, and I never can think of it. But I think Donnie Darko's it's up there for favorite.
Really? Does it hold up? I remember it being good when I was
It
like
does.
15 or 16. Like I don't.
It's totally.
It holds up, and then if you
I just
there's
feel
like
it would be real pretentious now or something. Or just man, because I just
wearing
remember
that stupid human suit.
yeah, it's awesome, and there's more to it. Like they
it might
had
be
to
good. I might give it another shot.
They had to dumb it down for theaters, is kind of what I heard. And then if you really get into it, there's the whole book within the movie. They actually showed a lot of excerpts of it. It's the philosophy of,
It's been so
time
long.
travel. It's awesome. You got to watch it.
All right, I'll revisit it.
It's like
Yeah,
a
'cause it has been.
teenage version of Jacob's Ladder.
I've never seen that one.
That's a good movie.
but yeah, I'm gonna do a little article on that, and I got some other kind of fun stuff in there, some life hacks in the Patreon. I renamed the zine to Jingle Money Time Zine instead of Jingle Times. So I threw the
nice.
money in the middle.
Jingle Money
Jingle
Time
Money
zine.
Times.
Yeah, it's magic. That's magic right there. That's word magic.
GMT. Or you could just go buy some songs at sirfelix.bandcamp.com if you like.
Hell
the
yeah, you
songs,
can.
and Working
Best
on some newer
albums.
songs.
Which Felix's songs close out every episode of the show. For people who listen to this. I know there's people listening.
And in my head, I've been trying to come up with a comic book jingle for Cruising with Steak. Today I was kind of...
Oh, Jerry would love a good Marvel segment. Yes.
I was
Hell yeah.
spitballing in the shower.
Once you get that jingle, I'll be on every week doing a fucking comic book segment.
And the reason I kind of was thinking about it is because I went back to my parents this past weekend, and she gave me all my comic books back from like the
Nice.
90s.
Oh yeah.
So,
nice.
got some 90s comics, and I went and looked up the value of them. They're not worth that much.
No, probably nothing. What do you got? Some X-Men, some Spider, some Death of Superman.
Different Spider-Man universes and X-Men and
Yeah.
Scooby-Doo. I got some Scooby-Doo, some Ren and Stimpy.
Oh, I love the classic Ren and Stimpy or Animaniacs comic book. Just something off the wall. Man, speaking of off the wall, we got some hate mail, you guys.
Uh-oh.
Only a couple of them. Just a couple.
No.
That's
Just
all right.
a few.
Some hate mail is better than no hate mail. I appreciate it. So let's do this
James,
jingle.
is it your son's birthday today or yesterday?
It was yesterday.
We'll do that
James
too.
Cruise and
We'll do that too.
8 years old. Yeah.
Hey man, a woo. GRIMSTAKN. G-man, a woo. James Cruise and Grim Steak. Hey man, a woo.
All right, got a couple hate mails here. The first one is from our boy Booty Rooter. You can listen to Booty Rooter's podcast, Double Dungeon. I think he still does that thing.
There he is. Yep.
And he says, I'd love to write you a hate mail, but instead, I'm trying to ask the Cruising with Steak community for some advice on how to get my audio line in working on my computer. The responses so far have been, hit it with a hammer or fill it full of beans. I really hate you guys. And that's a true story. He actually asked for advice, and those were the only two things that he got. Smack it with a hammer or fill it full of beans. So that's a valid hate mail. That is a totally valid hate mail he has right there.
Oh man.
And this one is from Steaky Bob. He says, hate mail. This show makes as much sense as Blood Blockade Battlefront. Too much information at once, super flashy and full of monsters. Everyone should quit listening and switch to Shonen Dump. Love, Steaky Bob. P.S. Patreon.com/cruisinwithsteak.
Hey, thanks.
Which thank you, Steaky Bob, because we have a Patreon too. Patreon.com/cruisingwithsteak, where we have tons of bonus content. I think last week
every week,
me, James, and Flavortown talked about anime for at least half of the episode, but it's cool.
Probably.
It was. Yeah. It's quality content on there. I promise. There's good stuff. So there's that. Man, Denver comes in with Giants. We're talking the full first. That was beautiful. We haven't mentioned
Denver.
the C
Like,
word yet,
I was just gonna say, you got your store too. Like, where do people find your stuff?
Plug it, Denver. Give me your plugs.
Yeah, just go to Amazon's. Easy
all
enough.
through Amazon. Sweet.
Yeah, Amazon. The new book. I'm hoping people will go to Adventures Unlimited Press. Just look them up online. You can get the book on Amazon too, but I make a few cents more royalties if you go to the publisher. Yeah. So I'll make $2 instead of $1 off a book if you buy it there.
Right.
But I'm on Twitter. I don't really do a whole lot on Facebook, but I do have a Facebook page, Author Denver Michaels.
Yeah.
And I've got a.
You know what I always find it fascinating on your Twitter feed? I just love all the cool places you end up, man. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Check his Twitter out. I'm telling you.
Yeah, you got some great lands.
I know you're all into hiking and exploring everywhere. So, what are the coolest places you've been so far? Like this summer?
This summer, I've pretty much just been Virginia, For the most part, I've just been
A lot
in
of
Virginia,
Virginia.
but
I drove
yeah, I
through
just
Virginia
kinda,
just a week
yeah,
or 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
yeah, I've been doing a lot of hiking out in the mountains, and right now I'm actually on the Chesapeake Bay right now. But yeah, normally I do quite a bit of traveling and I'm all over.
How's the ticks treating you, man?
Actually, they've not been as bad this year as they were last year.
They
so
turned them
far.
loose in Kentucky this year,
Did they?
man. They're kicking my ass. Yeah.
Last year they were awful last year, but the ticks hadn't been too bad at all this year. Not, knock on wood. I mean, hopefully that continues.
Yeah, until the genetically modified mosquitoes get there, man.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's coming. I mean, we dodged the murder hornets, but
yeah, what's up with that? That was like that was a 2-day headline, just gone.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess they got
it was a buzzkill.
There wasn't enough fear
I
on
was
the
kind of
news,
looking
so
forward to that, but I guess all the other stuff took precedence. I guess I don't know.
Oh man, murder hornets. Murder hornets came in, then it was the Black Lives Matter protests and riots.
Yeah, I think the murder hornets kind of got preempted by the protests and stuff. But I was really looking forward to that. The murder hornets.
They're saying that the protests now are the reason that it saved people from COVID.
Of course it did.
Well, right. Yeah, that makes
it saved people from it.
People from COVID.
Yeah,
there's
I mean,
a lot of backwards thing going on right now.
Protesting your business being closed down is that spreads it like wildfire.
Yeah,
but
100 episodes ago was
yes,
Purple People Eaters number 62. Bill the Shill was on it, and Jerry and Grim and James.
Man, and that was I think you sang "One-Eyed, One-Horn, Flying Purple People Eater."
I would imagine
on that show.
October 2018, and
Halloween time.
You guys were talking about Brett Kavanaugh.
That sounds about right.
Jesus,
man, our show sucks.
Oh man.
But that was back when I actually wrote what we talked about in the description. Now literally if you go back to like the last like probably 30 shows, it's just I don't know, we talked about some shit that I remember laughing about. Check this out. This was cool. And that's the entire description. It's all right. Cruise Mistake 3-year anniversary coming up 2 weeks.
Weird.
We beat the murder hornets.
We beat them all.
Oh, that's your show title right there.
We beat the murder hornets. I like that. Man. And masks are coming back. Masks are coming back with a vengeance, you guys.
Oh man, yeah.
It's getting serious.
It's sad.
It sort of is. I mean, we're absolute slaves.
It's sad.
We can't.
But I'm gonna design some, and we can just.
Dude, just keep fighting it, and then if people don't let you come in, don't.
Made up for people.
Or just if people don't let you, don't do business with them. Just don't give them your dollar, and then that's the only way that you could speak. And then I say,
anyone who tells you that you're being selfish because you're not wearing a mask, or you're gonna say fuck you.
I haven't had.
Fuck yeah, that's all you can. Exactly, Jerry. Yes.
Oh, I'm reminded of a dream. Can I do this dream real quick?
Give me the dream, Felix. We could balance between rage and dreams. This is Cruise Mistake. It's a fine line. We don't go full off the rails.
So I was hanging out with my parents in the dream, and all of a sudden, this Chinese or Indian little girl, she's probably like 3 or 4, maybe 5. She ended up in my parents' house, and she was dancing around and spinning around, and we're like, whose daughter is this? And my mom and people said, oh, it's the Chinese, the Indian family down the street. It's their daughter. It's okay. So then later, the mom and the family, the whole entire Indian and Chinese family came in and picked up the daughter, and they were all standing on my mom's stairs. And I was just saying bye to them and say, oh, hey, see you guys later. And the old Indian grandma was kind of at the top step, kind of crouching down on the top step. And I accidentally like shifted my weight and stepped on her finger. And she cussed me out, and she had this really tiny hand, and she flipped me off. She gave me the finger, and I was apologizing to her, saying, I didn't mean to step on your foot." Flipped me off. And the second part of the stream is real weird, and it just has all these overtones of all this crap going on. And I was at a coffee shop, I think it was like Starbucks, and ordered a coffee. I make my own coffee usually. And there were 3 people at the cash register, and this guy starts giving me a massage as I'm ordering my coffee, and it was a little awkward, and I go, "Oh, hey, nice, that's nice little massage," as I'm getting my coffee, and then I go,
"Did you tip him?"
This is the punchline of the dream. I was so worked up about it all, and I go, "Oh, did I forget to pay?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, you paid." And they showed me my debit card receipt, and I go, "Oh," and I didn't give them a tip. So then I started pulling all these really crunchy, dirty dollar bills, and they're like, "No, we don't take those dirty dollar bills here. They got germs on them and things." So yeah,
That's
my
crazy.
My brain's been pretty infiltrated. So then I go, "Oh, you're not going to accept my dollars. I'm out of here," and I just walked.
Yeah.
Oh, you pulled that off. Yeah,
I didn't-
you took your money and ran, even in your dreams, telling you
dude,
not to do it.
Yeah, guys, here's what I'm thinking. Literally, the businesses have us all under the gun. Like, I can't even explain the story that Lady Eboshi went through today, but she basically like tried to fight the law, like called up to like city ordinances, like was calling up, and basically you need lawyer. You have to walk around with a lawyer at your side at all times in order to get into these buildings.
Don't you feel like this part of the whole ploy is like you're gonna not go to these places and it's just gonna ruin these places?
No, I think the whole ploy is to comply people into wearing this like some sort of cultish mask, and I do not like the muzzling. I do not like it, and that's what it feels like.
Starting
it's a symbol.
tomorrow, where I work is now requiring everyone employee as tomorrow.
It's over.
It's been 5 fucking months, and they haven't done a goddamn thing. And then tomorrow, you know what it is? It's because 2 people complained. It has nothing to do with safety.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with concerns. It's they don't want to lose their partnership with Apple, and they don't want to get sued. That is literally the only.
Quit.
Yeah, okay.
Just quit.
Yeah, just find a job.
People need
Fucking get the fuck out of here, Jerry. I don't know how to make websites like you. All right. I got a very specific set of skills.
Dude.
Just learn to code. Oh,
Learn to
Jerry,
code, bro.
learn to code.
Learn to
God.
coding
No, dude,
Karen over
more
here.
like get a job in the coal mines.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna go work in those fucking giant quarries. Is what I'm gonna do.
Dude, you live in Arkansas. There's gemstones in so many of those
dude,
lands.
there's a diamond.
Can't you run coke for the Clintons or something?
Oh, dude, they're long gone. I could go
They're
work
long
in their library. You know, funneling the kids into the tunnels. But
I
for
can't.
the orphan trains.
Let me tell you guys about them tunnels. Trump's shutting them down. WWG1 WGA.
Yeah.
We got this, babies. Tunnels are closing.
Those tunnels aren't in this dimension, guys.
2020, baby.
Dude, mega. All right, there's our ironic Trump support for the.
Of course,
for a minute.
just weird shit.
We'll get that out. I don't vote, guys.
He hasn't done jack shit to help any of those kids in the underground bases.
Hey, Jerry, where's Oprah at? Where's Ellen at? Where's Tom Hanks? Can you tell me where Tom Hanks is?
No.
Yeah.
Where are they?
I saw this guy on Crowdsource of Truth yesterday or the day before. His name was Charles Ward, I think. Spouting all this Q bullshit about how, all these stars were arrested. And he cites this website called, I think it was CaliforniaArrests.org. And it has like arrest records for like Sandra Bullock and Tom Hanks and Oprah and all these people. But it's like some fucking bullshit website. It's not even an official California website. And he's going on, I don't follow Q, he's saying, but everything he's saying is like Q bullshit. Like, oh.
I don't get into Q stuff, but the reality is, we the people woken up. There's been a total shift.
Dude, but that's I feel like everything is merging to that. Like I saw a meme that like I kind of agreed with. It was something about masks and all this shit. And I'm like, yeah, I get on board. And then like look at the bottom, it says WWG1 WGA. And I'm like, oh, QAnon's jumping on the mask train. I'm like, so now I feel it's like, man,
the whole Q psyop is to get people to. It's twofold.
Trust the plan.
One is to make people not think about what's really going on. And secondly, it's
make them
prepare them to accept martial law more easily.
Bullshit.
Yeah, dude, they were begging. They were begging for martial law when this COVID shit came on. They wanted it. That's what's scary about the Q movement. Everybody's like, oh, and then you see like all these guys online saying Q's dangerous. All these guys are. It's like, no, they're not. They're literally, they will take the boot down. They'll take it and they'll love it. And they'll say, thank you, Mr. President. Please arrest the pedophiles. That's all they'll say. It's ridiculous.
The pedophiles are real. I mean, how many people
oh no, they're totally
about?
Real. They're there.
Yeah,
but Mr. President's in cahoots with them all.
But this whole adrenochrome thing is bullshit. I mean, all of the stories around it. Yes, there are probably pedophiles in Hollywood, but it's probably not as rampant as.
You ever drank the blood of a frightful child, Jaron? You're going to tell me adrenochrome isn't real?
Wash down them flying fish eggs.
Not since my kids were little.
We can't take it anymore.
Man. Sorry, Denver. I'm sorry. We'll put a disclaimer.
No, I don't care, man.
I mean, this is about as crazy as it gets. They're just fun, man.
So Denver, you're a geologist or you're a.
No, I'm an engineer and technologist, overpaid machinist, basically.
You do write books about. What do you write books about?
Oh, cryptids, paranormal stuff, just whatever.
You know the
weird topics that interest me.
Do you know the Beast of Briar Road, or what is it? My hometown's right outside of like Elkhorn Lake.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The Mid-Dog Man, or Dog Man, or Wolf Man, or I don't know.
Yeah, I'm somewhat familiar with it.
Close to home.
Cool.
Yeah, I know. There was one something I wanted to ask you about. I was just on your site, and I think it was the paranormal in Atlantic City stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like what? Yeah, some of the cool things that you talked about this trip that you took to Atlantic City and winds through like 4 states.
Yeah,
and many creatures along the way, right? So,
there's a lot of, of course, there's a lot of Bigfoot sightings, that sort of thing. But there's a lot of like cool haunted places along the way, and in Atlantic City itself, there's some good haunted tales. There's the lighthouse there supposedly haunted, and in that inlet that comes in there, that Absecon Inlet, there, it's a really dangerous place, a lot of shipwrecks. So there's supposedly a lot of leftover residual activity, that sort of thing, from a lot of those old shipwrecks,
paranormal kind of
like
stuff.
That.
Ghost ships and shit. That would be sweet.
Ghost stories, things like that, and supposedly in the old, it's I think Hard Rock owns it now, but the old Trump Taj Mahal there was a couple ghost stories supposedly where someone jumped off the roof of the hotel, and there's a place in the casino that people would say that I think like around midnight you could feel these like these cold spots or cold blasts, and I had a lady send me an email telling me about a room that she stayed in there that she said was haunted. Just a lot of things like that. That's if you're into that sort of thing, into ghost stories, stuff like that, there's cool things like that.
Well, Well,
I like Scooby Doo.
Oh,
you meddling kids.
So last year we did this CryptidCon in
we did
in where was it? What
Frankfurt, Tennessee.
Yeah, Frankfurt, Tennessee.
Lexington, Kentucky.
Lexington,
Kentucky.
Frankfurt,
Franklin
Tennessee.
was the year before.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it was a little bit closer this time. Yeah.
So that's the 700 milligrams of edibles will do, James.
Yeah.
Got him.
Got him. I'm laughing hard. Now you really
Frankfurt, cryptid. We were talking CryptidCon, Frankfurt.
No, we did that.
Lexington.
Yeah, we went there, so we actually had a booth and everything.
The first one was at Frankfurt.
The table,
Second one.
and then now you're really confusing me. So we had the table this time, and we got to talk to everybody.
We still have hours of audio that never saw the light of day.
I think we have it. I still have it all. Yeah. I don't know. I thought it took tough.
We should put it on the Patreon.
Talk to Justin.
Scooby Doo van was there too.
There was a Scooby Doo van there.
Well, anyway, so we did that, and then, but like you said, like you got these stories sent to you and stuff. You know, like that was kind of crazy. Like everyone that would come by. Granted, even walking into an event like that, you're already pretty much open-minded person, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
So like, but it was so cool to have everyone like once they asked like, what are you guys doing? And you're like, well, we're just this podcast, you know, and we love talking about all this kind of stuff with everybody. And it's great to hear people like word of mouth at that time, you know, it was awesome. And then you get people talking and like, they would just be like, yeah. And then this one time and then boom. And they would just lay out this crazy story, you know, like I had so many of them.
People, people are very forward with, you know, if they feel like that you're someone that's safe to share their story with, it's, you know, not going to belittle them or, you know, make fun of them.
Not at all.
You know, and just, you know, if they feel like you're safe and you'll just listen. I mean, people tell you some of the wildest tales, you know.
Have you done a few of those at all, or like,
you know,
event, or have been to an event before?
I don't really, I've not really done too many. I did a speaking engagement up in Morgantown, West Virginia back, when was it? Back in the fall.
Oh,
and then I was supposed to do one. I was supposed to do one in April, but it got canceled because of this stupid fake virus bullshit.
Hell yeah, go off. Fuck this virus. It's all bullshit.
Hey, remember when I knocked over that snowflakes display next to us?
We're not careful here.
Oh man, James. James, hold on. Jerry, I absolutely remember when you destroyed her entire display. I felt so bad.
Me too.
I didn't even know what was going on. You're just crushing things.
Denver, do you ever do any research into Jack and the Beanstalk? Origins of the Jack and the Beanstalk?
Oh shit, Giants.
No real research.
Just to know the story.
Just a little bit of the story. I hadn't really, you know, tried to track it down to.
Let's take a deep dive into Jack and the Beanstalk right now.
I haven't really done that.
You gotta seek out the truth.
Well, you should.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who did Jack? Is that Aesop or is that Grimm's Fairy Tales?
I can look it up.
Somebody look it up right quick.
A million Googles.
I don't know.
Who knows? It's a mystery. Oh
English
man,
fairy tale.
Benjamin Tabbert.
Some one-hit wonder.
It's a pretty good hit, though.
It was originally called The Story of Jack Spriggans and the Enchanted Bean.
Is it a story of giants or just really good crops? I mean, what's the moral here? Yeah.
Don't be greedy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Giants use for the grind bones to make bread. That's all I got out of that.
Yeah.
Fuck with giants.
I got a giant question. What's your thoughts on the whole, like, all those dudes that find the old like muskets, like elephant guns, and like books, like what's your thought on the possibility of there being a bunch of stuff left over the Giants used to use?
I've heard, the stories of, people finding these 12-foot swords and things like that. Somebody was telling me, and I can't verify it or anything, but about these 12-foot iron swords in Pennsylvania that were found. I've read accounts. I read an account, I think it was from 1820. I can't remember the source right off the top of my head, but it was over in West Virginia, of a 10-foot iron bow I think it was a farm. No, it wasn't a farmer, but a guy found it.
10 foot.
Yeah. Yeah, iron. So, that brings up a couple interesting things. Number one, a 10-foot bow, it'd have to be a pretty big boy to use it. Number two, iron, supposedly iron was not in use in the Americas then. And, of course, there's in a lot of the mounds, you hear about a lot of other strange artifacts, that have been found. Some, probably were fake, but then there's been a lot of other ones that are pretty interesting, copper and brass coins, that sort of thing. So I don't know. It's there's a lot of interesting supposed finds associated with giant burials.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's hard to know what's really like
a lot of it is hard to know what's true and what's not,
because you got to think like a lot of these Victorians were sitting around just like making shit up for fun. They liked a lot of these stories, and like I'm sure if some rich Victorian dude was bored enough, he'd probably
and that's
just
exactly
have a giant sword casted.
If you're completely comfortable, just think of the crazy shit that your brain could come up with, like if you're one of those rich dudes. Like you have just some slaves doing everything, your imagination, like it's whatever you can come up with.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to know what to take away from a lot of that stuff, but with a lot of the things that have been found, I don't know. I think there probably were some, a lot of legitimate artifacts that you shouldn't be there, if our understanding of history is true,
Yeah, you hear the legends of find them buried, setting up with those giant swords across their laps. You don't know if that's it's a great story. I like it. I repeat it whenever I can, but I don't know if there's any truth to it at all.
Well, and that's the problem. You just can't really go back and verify it.
Right.
I mean, you can a lot of times. You can find, where the account was originally published and things like that, but there's just no way to check out a story from 1819 of,
yeah.
How would you verify this,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, some piece of a little microfilm that you might find at the public library or something of a picture in a paper, somewhere.
And then also it's like so many of those guys at that time were just putting out whatever bullshit they could to sell papers too. So it's like how many of those were nonsense stories that
I mean there was a lot of that went on back in the day, and a lot of your cryptid stories and things, people have kind of confirmed to be newspaper hoaxes and things. But on the other hand, like a lot of these giant burials, I mean, a lot of them are found like in old county histories, things like that.
That's more
and
legit.
A lot of them are accompanied by, an affidavit, and it sounds kind of weird for us today. Nobody signs an affidavit of truthfulness, but that was a pretty big thing back then. People, to sign an affidavit swearing the truthfulness of what you allegedly saw. I mean, that was a big deal, and those were, legal documents and things back then. So you have affidavits of, with accompanying the accounts and a lot of these things.
Yeah, they used to grind those bones for the tonics they sold, man, from town to town. So that's where a lot of it went.
And like in Central America, supposedly they would dig up the giant bones and grind them up for, medicinal purposes. You have, a lot of the stories like in the South Pacific, like when a 9-foot chief would die, they would eat them, and I guess that held some sort of power or whatever,
Man.
So
yeah, I mean, I would do that. If I was around back then, I'd totally be snorting fucking chief bone dust.
I mean, that sounds crazy now, but yeah,
let's give me that power.
People did some weird shit back then, though, man. I mean, like
people
even
do
in
weird shit now too, so I could imagine.
Yeah, it's probably pretty tame back then. But, I mean, there was
exactly
there was like an actual mummy trade where people with more money than brains would take mummies and grind them up and make medicine or paint or fertilizer or just all kinds of weird products and stuff. So you have to believe that a lot of your giant bones were treated in similar fashion.
Yeah, the Tennessee State Museum has a mummy, Egyptian mummy. I mean, what the hell? It's a male too because it's mummified in 2 different parts.
Wow.
Yeah. It's the family show.
Family friendly show here. Come on.
That's interesting that you mentioned that, because isn't that, I mean, they have a bunch of Egyptian iconography all over that city, right?
Yeah, well, Memphis, that's not where that's at, but Nashville is like Greek architecture, Parthenon and stuff. But,
Dude, there was don't they have they had a pyramid there for the Tennessee Expo in 1897, and then they had isn't that where the Bass Pro Shop?
Yeah, that's Memphis. Yeah, Memphis
that's Memphis.
Named after. Yeah, it's named after it. Yeah, so yeah, there's still it is a Bass Pro Shop now.
Nashville had a pyramid had a bunch of Egyptian stuff for their Tennessee exposition.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think King Tut came through town.
Oh yeah, they love pretending that King Tut goes all over the world, don't they?
Exactly.
King Tut goes all over the world. Just like Jesus. Japanese Jesus.
Oh yeah, Japanese Jesus. Hell yeah.
What, you guys talk about Japanese Jesus?
Yeah, Japanese Jesus. He's got a shrine in Japan. It's a thing. It's world religions globally. World thoughts. All the same archetype things have happened. What is it? Tartarians? What is this?
I mean, maybe.
What is this?
We don't know.
Give me the.
My thing is the other thing I wonder about too is like all these old Victorian homes. They have these like 12-foot tall ceilings and these huge doors. Like, what are all these buildings? Like all these, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. But you also just looked like a fucking baller if you had big ass doors and high ass ceilings.
But yeah, that's a bunch
of like servants walking around.
Well, it's part of like you can look at it 2 ways.
Who likes low ceilings? For real.
Well,
yeah,
true.
Come on.
Also, who likes low ceilings? But you can kind of look at it 2 ways. You can look at it as like mind control. So like the state is God and you are nothing compared to the state. And so when you walk in through those doors, it's kind of this like subliminal, the government is better than you and is godly. Or you can look at it literally, which is there were people that needed doors that big to enter into buildings, and that you also had a lot of those buildings had regular sized second and third stories. So the idea being is that those were the like slave quarters or like the workers' quarters above, and the larger people existed on the first floor, which was the main the main entrance to the home. So
like
you see that a lot in old architecture, where you have these huge vaulted ceilings in the first floor, and then the rest of it is pretty normal.
Yeah, the big doors for Chuck Norris.
Oh yeah. Oh man.
I don't know. All I'm saying is
Would that
maybe these giants existed a lot more recently than we think.
So in a way, that would kind of explain the big fireplaces too that you
Maybe
see.
we have no
really
idea. Big, huge
Dude,
fireplaces.
those fireplaces are a weird rabbit hole, dude, because you see a lot of photos from those homes, and those fireplaces don't have recesses where you would put wood. They have these like metal plates in front of them, and then these weird looking like spire devices in front of them. They're very strange. Like if you look up Victorian fireplaces, you'll find that most of the time they don't look like they were for burning wood at all. So I think potentially wood burning fireplaces in those kind of homes were something that was retrofitted later.
I mean, these are all just hypotheses.
No, we have only proofs on Cruise and Mistake.
Yeah,
I don't know what you're talking about.
yes. Everything on Cruise and Mistake is backed with the strictest facts.
Yeah, I've got
101 proofs at least.
Yeah, I've got 20 pages of bibliography to back up every single thing I just said. So,
fuck you.
Back
guys.
off, buddy.
Oh man, that is true. We do bring the absolute essential facts. I mean, you can't.
I mean, dude, come on. You had those doors, those doors in those old homes that end up. We talked about this. What was that on the Patreon episode?
Probably. We talk about all the best stuff on the Patreon. You guys should subscribe to the Patreon.
Those doors that are like nowadays, they're normal sized doors, but then they have those like glass. What do you call them? Like porticos or whatever above them. So it looks like they were maybe larger doors that were retrofitted because they don't make doors that big anymore. So
we
they
don't need
just
them
filled
for
them
these
in with
giant
glass.
people. These giant people anymore. They don't exist. Man, I don't know.
Exactly.
What about? Hey, I got a question. What about the NBA? Do you think they had something to do with giants?
There it is. There it goes.
NBA.
Go off, Queen.
They're tall.
I did just watch a little documentary about the Watusi from the 30s, man. And those dudes are a tribe of 7-footers. Yeah. They were talking about they were the last of the real hierarchical family in Africa. Yeah.
Man.
But yeah, the king didn't look that big till he stood up, and he just kept standing up. I mean, he had like they were long legged.
Dunking from half court. Just
Minute Bowl. Think of the Minute Bowl. That's a reference you got. Yeah. In a 1930s documentary film. It was a whole tribe of them. Yeah.
Well, what about on the opposite end of the spectrum, where you hear like, what's that Pygmy Island? And there's so many documents of just little people everywhere. Like it's I don't know. If there's giants, there's got to be little people. It's like yin and yang.
Tribe.
Now you're talking underground using the honeycombed earth to travel. That's how
give me
they get around.
Give me that good shit, Nikki. That's what I'm talking about.
That's how because they're in Hawaii too. They built a bunch of shit there, but they only came out at night. That's what the natives said.
I was listening to one podcast, and my brain's just a shitty sponge. James knows all about this. Yeah. I heard something about some sort of war between these birds and like this race of little people that happened on this.
Birds aren't real. Birds aren't real.
But that's actually a Cherokee legend.
Oh shit!
Yeah. That's actually, you can find that legend in James Mooney's, and he was an ethnologist, I think, for the.
But are we talking about Moonite people?
No, this is in Myths of the Cherokee. James Mooney recounted a tale where there was a tribe of little people, and they were like harassed by birds and by geese actually, and so they met some a bunch of Cherokee young men I think they went south and ran into them and taught them how to defend themselves. And they actually showed them that, if you used a club and, would hit the goose in the neck, it would, it would kill the goose. And so, they were fine for a while. The Cherokee left, but then eventually, like a group of sandhill cranes, came in, but they were too big and they killed this tribe of little people. I can't remember, the name of the tribe, but it's in that book. Look up Myths of the Cherokee. You can download it, free copy. It's like a book from 1902, but it's kind of a fun tale.
All right. Yes, yeah, I've heard a story that's exactly like that. But I think it might have.
Yeah.
Man,
that might be. That sounds like the one that
might
you're
be
thinking of. And in that book, Myths of the Cherokee,
Man,
there's a whole bunch of other little people.
Yeah.
There's like different groups of them.
Man, just makes you think.
The Orang Pendek, right? That's a cryptid or a little human, maybe.
Orang Pendek. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, lives around on the side of the earth at the orangutan, also in
it's a
same jungles.
It's a cryptid. I think in Sumatra. I think maybe
somewhere around
or
there.
one of the Indonesian islands. Yeah. I don't really know how big it's supposed to get or anything like that, but I don't think it's like real big like a Bigfoot or nothing. I think
that's what
kind of small, ain't it?
Yeah, that's what I seen about it. They were talking about 3.5, 4 foot, maybe adult. So they were saying could be pygmy.
Yeah. And there's a lot of pygmy legends too. Now, I wouldn't say as many as giants. Because a lot of times they're these little people, pygmies, are spoken of more spiritually. Like fairies and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But back in the 1800s in Tennessee and Kentucky, you can find like newspaper report after report or
the goblins,
these pygmy graveyards in like White County, Tennessee. Supposedly thousands of adult skeletons 2.5, 3 feet tall. It's I don't know. I don't know. Skeptics argue that it's children buried and things, but when you take some of the native tales, I don't know. Kind of makes you. It kind of makes you wonder, if like I said, if our prehistory isn't a little bit different than we've been led.
Well, and you have
believe.
stories like the Hopkinsville goblins, that event going on, and like a lot of goblin events, and so little people, goblins.
It's like who the hell knows?
I don't know. Weird shit's happening. That's basically. We live in a strange fucking world. That's what it is.
It's a strange world, and it ain't getting no better.
No, it isn't. Boy, that's why we all need to focus on getting it better and just try to make a good thing out of this shit that's going on. Craft a new world, craft something better, craft something for ourselves, get out of this bullshit system. Let's open our own business. Let's say, hey, if you don't want to wear masks, come in and shop. That's how we do it. We make this shit our own. We don't have to agree to this shit. Don't comply. Don't give the businesses your money.
Or we also make masks for giants, though.
Just in case. This is pretty much all I'm saying there.
The Cherokee have another myth about, they have a story about the Moon-Eyed people.
Yeah.
In North Carolina, I believe. And I think I talked about this on the pod before. But it's from a book. It is called I don't have the name of the book off the top of my head, but it's from like the 1700s.
Yeah.
It's a 1797 book by Benjamin Smith Barton.
Okay. Yeah, I have that. Yeah.
They talk about how there were moon-eyed people, and there's some like statues of some creepy looking moon-eyed folk that are in some museums in like North Carolina. So it's not like there's some precedents that they existed, and I guess they lived in the caves around that area, or at least they had a hard time seeing in the dark, I guess is their whole thing, and they were also fairly short. So
yeah, it's pretty fascinating. I mean, it's
ridiculous to think like America's so fucking big. Like it's so big. Like you drive around, people that don't go outside of cities, if you like drive outside of a city even a couple hours and you pull your car off to the side of the road and you just walk out into the middle of a forest, like there's a good chance that you're the first person who stepped foot there in like the last 100 years. Like it's ridiculous how much space there is in the United States. To think that there weren't different like species or types of humans, large, small, not Homo sapiens, that were living in the in North America for at least the last few thousand years, and really honestly up until the last couple hundred years. So you got to think like this manifest destiny idea. I mean, that shit wasn't around until like 200 years ago, 150 years ago.
All this stuff, yeah.
People weren't even like our civilization, quote unquote, weren't even like getting on wagons and going out west until the mid 1800s. Like there has been world changing shit that has gone down in the middle of the United States that we have like almost no concept of because we weren't anywhere close to it. Like the New Madrid earthquake in 1812. Like we have stories about feeling it in Boston. We have stories about people that were on the Mississippi River, but like most of us were hundreds of miles away from the epicenter. We don't know what the fuck was going on in the middle of the country even 200 years ago. So to get this idea in our head that there was only us here and some Native Americans, and that's it.
Reelfoot Lake I was talking about last week, man.
Yeah,
right there. New
like
Madrid.
it's just it's ridiculous. It's naive to think that there wasn't all this.
There's people everywhere.
and to believe population numbers from the 17 and 1800s, like you look at the shit that they built and you look at the populations that they had, like there's no way. Like you go down into the South and you see all this evidence of these beautiful plantations and farming and all this kind of stuff. Like it's go out into the West and you see all this shit that was apparently built by prospectors. Like it doesn't make any fucking sense. There were so many more people here and so many more different types of people here until recently, and we just have no fucking. You were talking about the flood, like after these resets, which is what a flood is. You have this whole idea of like, well, that we're just the people who are left. There was a reset recently. Relatively.
No,
I think it's time for a new one, man. Horace
we're getting another one
told
now.
him to go west. It's time to get out of town again, man. Hit the country.
Did you listen to the obelisk of ours last week?
I did not.
We talked extensively about resets and when the last one was and the new one coming up. And
yeah, I mean the last one was probably sometime between 1810 and 1840.
So according to our guest, it was like more like 12,000 years ago.
12,000.
Okay, that's fine. And that's the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, and I'm all in on that.
So you guys talk about
that's
so
a
many
major
mud floods.
reset.
He's talking about more like the Blue Kachina thing coming around, whatever that is, that planet causing the reset, and it's coming back apparently.
Blue
Like the
Kachina
electric universe
is it
kind of
similar
thing?
to like Planet X or
Dude,
something?
okay, now I have to talk about the electric universe. It came up 3 times in my notes because of all this stuff tonight. It all links to it being like, even in the chats, like I think like Tim Stakers mentioned electric stuff earlier. Even the charges, like ripping apart land, the electric charge of planets being formed and stuff, and like the Mars scar and all that. That's all due to like the destruction of that planet, basically. But anyway, so, and we were talking about the firmament stuff, and that's in that, like, if you like going in my research into that, I was watching a video with David Talbot, who's a part of the project, the Thunderbolts project or whatever, through the electric universe. So they did a bunch of videos, and they had a nice they had these like 3-hour long things. But anyway, So I was watching one, and they ended up talking about how, so if the planet at the time was like, the planets were closer, so gravity was different. So the firmament you're talking about, so that's why dinosaurs were so big. Like all these things were different. That's why flora and fauna was so big, because the weight balance and everything was completely different. So that was a big part. That was another part of whatever reminded me of that.
And take that a step farther, dude. A lot of these old, structures from back in the day maybe harnessed electromagnetic energy from the atmosphere, like this Tesla tech. But Tesla tech was a lot easier to do when you had an atmosphere that was way more conducive to electromagnetic and electric frequencies and all that kind of shit. So it was a lot easier to pull that shit right out of the sky. And
the
you
satellites are they're dampening. The fake satellites they have in the air right now are just dampening
everything. I mean, you have a reset, and you have this controlled weather, and you have the satellites, and you have cell phone towers and
5G.
Who were the people that we're talking? Well, there was a bunch of people in the beginning of all this shit that were talking about the correlation between pandemics and when different like communication systems were set up on the planet. So like the last one was right around when radio started becoming a thing.
I don't know, but I like that theory.
And there were some other ones that coincided with telegraphs.
Man, AIDS came around with the internet. That's probably
AIDS
not true.
came around, good solid 10 years.
That's CWS lore now. AIDS is synonymous with the internet.
We'll put that in the book.
Yep.
I overheard an AT&T guy at a bookstore the other day talking about how there's going to be all these big layoffs with these telecommunication companies because all this 5G stuff is just going to be remote. They're not going to be working with like copper wires anymore, and that people will just get modems wherever they need them, and they'll just work on things remotely.
That's how it is now. I mean, that's bullshit.
Well, they won't have to lay like fiber or anything. That's the whole thing.
Sure
they won't
they
have
will.
to.
Yes, they will. They still have to connect all those endpoints.
I don't know how it
5G
works.
only travels like 100 meters, and you need repeaters every 100 meters. So
Thanks.
in order
It's
to,
going to be like a mailbox. What's going on here?
So what you need to do is you need to get that person that was telling you, Felix, and get them in touch with Jerry, so you can tell them that hey, you're an idiot. They'll still need you to work.
I just want to know how they're supposed to transmit the 5G signal from the satellites if it can only go 100 feet, 100 meters.
Well, I don't know. We should get an engineer on to teach us how it works. We need a 5G. We need a 5G professional on the show to teach us facts.
Yeah, we need him.
Facts and logic. Then we could just call him an idiot and ask him if he knows about mud floods.
Hell yeah, got him.
So that's what would happen.
Got you, bitch.
Jerry, who got on Nox Mente tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night we got Mike Hideous.
Mike Hideous. That sounds like a sick show.
Whoa! I don't know who he is. I guess he's on the Michael Deacon show. He's the co-host.
Oh, okay.
I think. I'm not sure.
Mike Hideous, man.
It's awesome.
Well, this has been a blast tonight, you guys. It's been a great show. Denver, thanks for coming on.
Oh yeah.
So it's always
appreciate
it's always
it.
a pleasure.
It's always
man.
fun coming on with you guys.
Yeah.
We're gonna
we stayed kind of politically correct this time. We were good. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't go too crazy.
No, we were fun. We were having fun tonight, man. It was good.
Having fun. Good times, man.
It's good that last couple of weeks we've been bringing up some of the woo factor a little bit here and there, and it's been
Crazy
fun
times.
to take a break. Yeah,
take a break from it.
Take a break for a minute because there's been some things happening here and there. We were talking about recently, and then we knew you had this coming out, so that was going to be fun. So this was great, man. So thanks.
Good
again.
times.
Yeah,
so thanks everybody for listening. Yeah, thanks Denver, thanks Felix, thanks Flavortown, thanks Nikki, thanks Jerry, thanks Bill, thanks Melt Horse, thanks Zach Hawkins was here earlier, thanks that guy, and we'll catch you all.
Chats.
Yeah, thanks to Lam in the chats for sure. Everybody else in the chat's listening.
Yes,
there's
definitely.
Thank you,
Tons of
Suzanne,
love.
too, even though she couldn't be
definitely.
here.
Yes,
Fuck
always.
Suzanne.
I definitely was
Hey,
going to
come
say
on.
that.
Oh, geez. Okay, well, we'll see you
Can't
guys
end it on
next
that.
week. Patreon.com/cruisewithsteak, cruisewithsteak.com/donate. Good night. Goodbye.
equal sounds, but it is a catharsis on many levels. When you get it all down, whether or not you think me a singing clown. Enough with the wasting time. Here's some ideas worth a million suns and enlightenment. Don't be a servant to the system. The plan would be to stick it to the man, but you say, what if the man can stick it to me with more force? I'd say, disobey in any way, shape, or form, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to question the status quo. How have you become a servant to these masters of war? How have you become a servant to these masters of war? Personally, I don't ever want to be a servant to the system, a cog in the wheel, if you will. No, the plan